You're gonna want to do the same things now um, for the positive ones. The positive emotions that are the bigger emotions that are underlying all of the positive traits that you have. So, for instance, like we went over like love for myself, and all of the traits, the positive traits that I give off when I feel that emotion of love. It will be different for you depending on what emotions that you are going on. It doesn't necessarily have to be love, passion, freedom, or happiness. It's important that you find out exactly what triggers that reaction in you. What triggers the feeling of love for you in your life? What's the time that you felt most love, and why was it that you felt loved in that moment? So that's what we're going to figure out. The same way we figured it out for the negative cycle. We're gonna figure out exactly what is the triggering aspect to a feeling like love for you, and what's the memories that really instilled that love in you. If it is love, if it's another positive emotion, that's fine as well. So I'm gonna go through this at my own speed. You go through this at your own speed as well. We'll do it together. If you need more time than me, then just do a meditation that I have listed in my course that are standalones. They are usually around 10 to 15 minutes, so that should be enough time for you to do this type of meditation. Just keep your focus on what you're doing. So, for me, the feeling of love comes from feeling respected, accepted, and valued. Um, which is kind of interesting because in my negative mirror, the feeling of anger comes from being treated unfairly and lack of respect. And funnily enough, like the source of that love, like the times when I can remember feeling most loved was in some relationships, but in particular with my mother when I was young, and in my current relationship now. And in the contrast of the negative mirror, you can see that the positive mirror is the same thing, just reversed. So I'm gonna write down what it means to me, what triggers it, and also what memories brought it on. So now I'm gonna do the same thing with the next emotional area for my positive list, which is passion. So I'll figure out what triggers that feeling of passion within me and where did it come from. it's interesting. Like, where passion comes from for me is a sense of purpose, direction, and value that I can bring to the world. Which I'm sure if people are passionate about things, it would be similar lines that would make them passionate about things. But the past, like the part of the shadow that brings that is I have that passion because of all the bad things I've seen in the world and all the things that I don't like in the world. And through that dislike or that hatred of some things, it drives me to want to change it. So that's a direct relation to the shadow, and also that whole sense of purpose thing, and that sense of direction. Those are all things that I felt like I lacked a lot of the time in my past. Like, those are things that I felt and I feel sometimes when I'm triggered in my shadow self, as having no purpose, no direction, nothing of value even to myself. But in direct contrast to that, my higher self is completely about that, you know? So it's like this dual nature again and again that you'll see throughout this work. It's gonna look different for everybody. I just share my own experiences with you so you can have a general idea of what it looks like. And it's a powerful way of sharing and going through a process together. So that's why I'm sharing it with you. Not because I expect your experiences to be the same, not at all. So the next one on my list is freedom. And this is more for me like liberation, a feeling of freedom, of lightness. It's kind of abstract, but I'm gonna see where that comes from, what triggers that feeling in me. It comes to my mind like immediately sometimes. Now, freedom for me represents total acceptance of myself and others accepting me fully as well. This completes freedom, no limitation, is one of the most positive things in my life, positive experiences that I can have, one of the most powerful emotions to drive me and bring out those positive traits. And last time I can remember really feeling it, like the last memory is when my wife supported me to create a yurt off-grid and to pursue my passions, and still supports me today to do that. This is one of the most powerful feelings of liberation, to be able to do that against all like status quo issues, you know, like anything that pretty much all society would be against that, most of it anyways. but like she supports me and liberates me to be able to do the things that I want to do and the things that I care about. One of them is this, going out here, doing this workshop with you guys for a week. You know, where I just stay off grid in the snow to record videos, you know, for you guys and for myself, you know. So freedom is definitely a very positive, and it comes from this being a positive trait for me, like, is because like I was never felt accepted. I never felt accepted as a kid. Like my shadow self tells me I can't be accepted at all times, you know? Tells me that I can't accept others and they can't accept me, you know? So this higher trait, this higher self is accepting and loving of all things and accepts myself as well. And that's the positive trait. These correspond to each other very well, and you'll see that if you do this yourself, which you totally should. I recommend doing it with a pen and paper because at least those connections become more tangible, but not necessary as well, but would be good. So next one and the last one on the list is happiness, and the positive traits that are connected with that. So let's go into that now. So happiness is kind of like the opposite of my shadow self in its entirety. I would say probably like one of the main root issues in my shadow self, like one of the main things that my past experiences have created a negative cycle with me, is that I never feel like I'm enough. This goes for relationships, for work, for a bunch of different things. And happiness for me is the opposite for that. It's feeling like I'm enough. That's what happiness is to me. It's feeling like I'm enough in my family, in my work, and in my passions all at once. It's feeling like I've done enough, that I'm doing what I want to, and that I can see that there's progress happening. That is being happy to me. That is happiness. And that's in direct bipolar nature to the negative shadow self. And if you do this, you'll see what I mean very clearly. And there is a last step to this. The last step is to see the commonalities, which is what you should be already doing anyways. So see the combination and how they feed off each other. See that you are not just your shadow self, you are not just your higher self, but you are a dual creature with both. And actually you wouldn't want to just be one or the other, because the shadow self is what gives your higher self definition. If I didn't have my shadow self, which makes me feel like I'm treated unfairly and I have no respect from people, and if I didn't have that, then I wouldn't have the higher self that wants that for everybody, to be treated fairly and to be respected, you know? So it makes us who we are, and there's no way around that. That's what the next part of this is all about, which is acceptance. It's accepting who you are in your dual nature with your shadow self and your higher self. And the key to all this work is to look at your shadow self and see that it is the experiences that caused you to be that way. They don't define you. You can choose to define yourself as what your higher self says you are, and learn the lessons of the lower self, of the shadow self. Learn the lessons that it wants to teach you. Learn how those experiences can treat everybody else around you the same way. Learn that not everybody is acting like how they want to be acting, but they might not have a choice because they feel this way. They feel like they're in their shadow. They have certain effects and certain things that are affecting them from childhood and onwards. They're not conscious all the time of how and why they are acting the way they are. But if you've done this work correctly, you'll be more conscious about it. And if you do this work regularly, you'll be much more conscious about it. And if, for instance, somebody says something really negative to you, I hate you, you're never doing this, you never do that, then you can be like, it might make you feel a certain way, it might make you feel like you're treated unfairly, like you're nothing, you might go into those cycles, but you more quickly will be able to escape that cycle by realizing, you know what, this doesn't belong to me right now. This isn't true to me. This isn't true to who I am. And I don't need to feel this way. This feeling comes from a long time ago. It's not who I am right now. And you can get rid of it. And you can act on your higher morals within that, which say, you know what? Your shadow self, yourself is acting up right now. There's something going on with you to make you lash out like me. Lash out like this at me right now. And I don't need to hear that. I don't need to be part of that. I don't need to hold that energy. And that is the benefit of shadow work. It'll help you address those concerns. Now, there is another part, if you've gotten to this point and you're starting to see the connections, I'm sure you're starting to see, people around you and things around you a little bit more clearly. And this is normal. Because if you've done this so far, you'll see that people, different situations in your life, your job, are going to be manifestations of that shadow mind at play. And it might be worth questioning which things you still want in your life, which things you don't want in your life. Things that are feeding into that negative energy and things that aren't. It's perfectly justified to walk away from things, especially if it's influencing you in a bad way. Just understanding that other people have shadow life, shadow selves, and doesn't mean you have to put up with it. It doesn't mean you have to accept that, especially when you're going through your own stuff. You're gonna have to deal with a lot of your own things before you can deal with any other person's things. And if you're stuck in a toxic relationship or a toxic situation, you should walk out of that. You should align yourself to these higher values now that you're aware of them. And if you really are having a hard time aligning yourself with these higher values, maybe you have a hard time seeing your higher traits, look at your shadow self and see what the contrasting aspects of it are. If you're feeling like you're worthless, just imagine how good it would feel to make somebody worth something. Take in consideration how you feel about making somebody feel worth. Are you more conscious about that than most other people are? That's the experience I've seen a lot of the time, is that people who go through a lot of pain tends to be more ones that are sensitive towards other people's pain. This is because of the shadow. So it's not a bad thing at all, It's good that you can be more sensitive and that you have these unique gifts because of the shadow. Use them. See yourself in a neutral light where you are both. So, in the next few classes, workshops, whatever you want to call them. we're going to talk about how to use the shadow.